Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unpacking the Word. This is the podcast where we dive deeper into what it means to live in an ethnocidal society and how we can combat that by creating sustainable culture. I'm Luna, and I'm joined by my co-host, Barrett.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, Barrett. Today we're going to talk about the differences, or if there are differences, between kindness and niceness.
Perfect. So you watched a video or saw a post that prompted this idea. Can you tell me and the audience what this, distinction, what this video kind of talked about?
Yeah, I saw a TikTok a friend sent me, and I forgot the creator, unfortunately, but this creator was talking about the differences between what it means to be nice versus kind. And she kind of outlined, I think it was four major differences between what a nice person does and what a kind person does. And nice people, according to this TikTok creator, are intention-based, transactional, they have expectations, and they require external validation, right? So those are nice people. Kind people set the standard, are impact focused, do it because they want to. It's not transactional for them. They're not thinking that they're going to get something out of this, and internally validate themselves. And, I was watching this and I was like, I don't know. Sure, I guess. This isn't it's important, but it wasn't really speaking to me, I guess. And I was like, I don't know. These are, I feel like, synonymous words that we throw around all the time. But it wasn't until this creator said that, this doesn't mean if you're a nice person or a kind person, it doesn't mean that it's good or bad. Right? It's just the difference between being harmful versus helpful, which to me was very confusing because
I'm confused just hearing it.
Yeah, I mean, in my head, nice people are helpful. That's why they're nice, right? Nice and kind people are helpful. And I see with the definitions she provided, she was alluding to that nice people are harmful, right?
Yeah, but while saying that, also saying that it's not about good or bad. So then the question is harmful in her construct potentially a good thing? I don't see the distinction where it's not about being good or bad, it's about being helpful or harmful. So is that maybe she's trying to change the language so that people don't feel like she's saying they're a bad person, and instead she's saying that they're being harmful, and that I found that weird. But I guess the key thing for what you described and this distinction between being kind and being nice is that the description of nice that she gave sounds like a very Western way of going about stuff. If you live in a money-based society, the money economy is the thing that drives how everyone lives, that's going to incline people to be transactional because that's all about transactions. People in America even call themselves consumers because we make so many transactions that we're just consuming stuff via the transaction. And so clearly there's going to be a fault in being transactional as your being, who you are as a person is being transactional, because it's really something that is inclined to ignore people's humanity and their spirit. You're just trying to get something out of them, and you hope that maybe they get something out of you and it becomes equitable, but having a transaction, you're trying to get something from somebody else. That's just what it is. It's not inherently bad, but that's what it is. And so if we live in a transactional society where the philosophy is being transactional, all these ideas that aren't supposed to be transactional, we're going to do them in a transactional way. So nice would be a thing that isn't inherently transactional, But if our society is inclined for people to be transactional, we'll
Mm-hmm.
do that. Also, like, if we're transactional, we're going to not be like caring as much about people's spirit and, like their humanity. Well, that would probably mean that we won't care about our own spirit or humanity as we do things. So we wouldn't then be able to find internal gratification or validation. We would need it externally because we don't cultivate it internally. And so it's
Right.
like she's using this, she's like finding fault with the word and not the philosophy that precedes it. But it's very much just as likely that you corrupt kindness in the exact same way. You know, like kindness is being articulated as if it's just a foreign thing that's why it's different but she doesn't process it as that. It's like the words are the problem, not the philosophies that like guide our application or understanding of them. And that's a pretty big problem.
No, yeah, I like how you frame that. It's not so much that the words are problematic, right? Or that we don't have a good definition of them. It's the philosophies of which they are implemented,
Right.
right? And maybe niceness seems like a more common word that we use in the US or Western culture
Yeah.
versus kindness. And maybe because kindness is used so rarely, it feels like it's rarely experienced.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more so the philosophies of which we practice niceness and kindness that she isn't really um,
Right.
taking into consideration.
Right. And
Yeah.
like kindness, I think you made a good point there where like it seems like a newer concept, you know,
Yeah.
which is speaks to a whole other problem. Um,
Right.
and that nice is more like ingrained in our society. And that's
Right.
why we're noticing that's problematic. But like, again,
Mm-hmm.
that problem doesn't reside with the word, it resides with the philosophy that instructs us how to do it. Like, we've all met plenty of people that claim to be nice and would say that they're very nice people, and then they go and do something horrible, and they'll do that horrible thing fully within their like structure of being nice, where they'll say something like, I believed that was nice, therefore
Mm.
I'm a nice person. And it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
that's not how it works. That's irrelevant. That's clearly some, you know, transaction gone awry. And you're saying that like the intent of the transaction is what matters and not what actually happened. Well, that's not a nice thing to do. you know? But
No, yeah.
it's like it's one of these examples, and you see this all the time, where like Americans will come up with this idea that they think is really really profound, and it just has zero philosophy, and just like if you say this word differently, magic happens, and the responsibilities with that. And then they'll have some really convoluted conclusion where that's not about good or bad, it's about harmful versus helpful. And it's like, well, then what's good or bad mean? Like, what's good or bad then? Like, what's the distinction?
Exactly.
Like,
Right. I mean, if you're saying that things aren't good or bad, but it's harmful or helpful, I mean, it's like, okay, so to me, harmful versus helpful is also good or bad.
right. And
You
like
know? Yeah.
with our philosophy of like, utopia and what good means, like good is sustainable and nurturing. That is helpful. Something that
Incredibly. Yeah.
doesn't sustain you or nurture you is harmful. Like I gave the example of a good friend versus a bad friend, but another just as good example I think is food. Poison is bad because it harms you. Like it if a poison tastes like your favorite food, if your favorite food is a particular type of ice cream, and someone makes like a vat of poison that tastes just like that ice cream, that doesn't make the poison good. It's still harmful. It's still bad. It's the same. Like, it's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. And the idea that you would think that there's a distinction between good and bad and harmful and helpful just speaks to having no clarity about what good or bad means.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and I think that's another big issue in the West, where, if you take it to, biblical Christian ideas, oftentimes what's good, or at least ideas that like have been told to humans by a divine person, and the bad things are also told to them by that divine person. So like, they don't actually have to have a connection to reality. Like, theoretically, all of the advice from the divine person could line up perfectly with, reality, and they work great. But they're not dependent on that. They're not good because they work. They're good because the person said that they work. And if they work, that's great. And if they don't work, it doesn't matter. Like, that's generally like the practice. And so if you have this type of idea of good or bad, now what's good or bad is something that's not connected to reality and is kind of like predetermined and eternal. And so maybe these people don't want to feel bad and that they're bad forever. And they would just prefer to feel that maybe they've been harmful in this instance, and they could change that instead of being predetermined to be a bad person forever. It's like, but even that concern is just like, it's wild. It's crazy. Like, the idea that you're just bad forever because someone says that someone that's magic said so. Like, come on now. Like, it just doesn't
Right.
make sense. So
Yeah.
it's a weird idea.
It is. I mean, I also, when I heard that, I was just, it confused me because I feel like niceness is still a good thing. Being a nice person, doing nice actions is still a helpful thing. And I don't see how being a nice person is harmful. Kind of what I mean, that's not what the TikTok creator said, but it was definitely alluding to. But again, with the definition she provided, right, being transactional, needing external validation, like having expectations, being only intention based, like I can see how that is could lead to some harmful actions or having some harmful impact, but like the word and the definition just didn't match up, right? And I didn't see how being nice could be harmful.
Well, it's really like nice and kind. If you look them up in the dictionary, I'm sure the words basically mean the same thing. There's not
Right.
like, so this person took it upon themselves to redefine one of the words and say that a synonym is actually something completely different, which then creates a whole other issue, because it's not that being nice is good or bad. It's that how people in the society she lives in, which I'm presuming is the United States, how they act in the world and proclaim themselves to be, that then results in them like redefining it. And yeah, I'd say, and this is a weird example, but maybe it's not that weird. But if you look at Eastern philosophy and you look at Buddhism and all the sorts of stuff, they really have kindness as an integral part of the philosophical spiritual practice. And
Mm-hmm.
so I could see how someone could view kindness as like a foreign idea, and that the Western equivalent of nice results in this, and the foreign concept of kindness has a different application.
Right.
And but that resides with the philosophy and
Yeah.
not the word, because if you look at Eastern philosophies and spiritual practices, they're called practices. Like, you're supposed to practice them. There's a way that you're supposed to do things and interact with people that is how you would do it in a kind way. And if you have issues with that, there's a recommendation you should meditate. And here are meditations that you can do pertain to kindness. And then you go and you practice it and da da da. Like, it's a whole thing about practicing it so that your kindness manifests in the way that's supposed to, so that it has the proper outcomes. The West doesn't have the practices. And so someone can be kind purely based off of their delusions without a regard as to, I mean, it could be nice, sorry. Someone in the West can be nice purely based off of their delusions without a concern as to whether their nice actions, the actions that they perceive to be nice, actually have nice outcomes. And if you're have supposedly nice outcomes with nice actions without nice outcomes, how are you nice? It's something like, if I say I'm really, really strong, and then I go to the gym and I can't lift a bunch of weight, it would make sense for me to leave the gym and say I'm not that strong, because that's what reality said. And then I would probably have a series of practices and things to do to, like, become strong.
Right.
If I can be strong without any concern to, like, how much weight I can lift, then the only thing that's saying that I'm strong are my delusions. And if we have a society that is supposed to agree with my delusions as reality, that's a pretty significant problem. You know?
No,
So,
yeah.
so I think that's, like, probably one of the key distinctions between this, like, nice and kind divide, where this nice person has convinced themselves that they're nice, and then they behave in a way that's pretty Western, and it results in not nice outcomes, and so that becomes harmful. Makes sense, but again, it's the philosophy and not the word that's the problem.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I just looked up, okay, the definition of nice in Merriam-Webster is pleasing, polite, kind. That's like literally in the definition.
Yeah.
Agreeable, appropriate, fitting, well executed, like a nice shot, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Respectable. And then the definition for kind is a group united by common traits or interests. Like, what kind of car do you have?
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Or, okay, yeah. I know, I would
Yeah.
not think of that as the first definition, but sure. Yeah. Fundamental, nature, or quality. Oh, so like a difference in degree, but not in kind. Okay.
Oh, that's okay.
Let's see. Okay, here we go. The adjective instead of the noun. That's my bad. Of a sympathetic or helpful nature, of a forbearing nature, arising from or characterized by sympathy or forbearance, of a kind to give pleasure or relief, like cooled by a kind breeze. Affectionate, loving. Okay, so I mean, yeah, there are subtle differences, right? Like, there's definitely more of a sympathetic, emotional kind of definition with kindness. And then with niceness, it's like you're polite, you're socially agreeable, like you are maybe.
So yeah, like the nice ones from the definition seems more shallow.
Yes.
And the kind one seems to have more depth. But
Yeah.
the funny thing is the depth comes from being sympathetic. Like, you're able to have sympathy. It's not just like you're putting on a show, That's kind but that's the thing. Like, sympathy, the word, and I talk about this in my book, it means fellow feeling. So, like, you can feel and connect with another person or another thing that you feels the same. And in the West, this is perceived as a level of depth, but all you're doing is projecting yourself onto other people and treating them as if they are you. Like, that's not that
Mm-hmm.
deep. Like
No, yeah.
empathy is when you see that you are different from something else and you try to imagine being in that different, So like
Mm-hmm.
that can extend to inanimate things. Like, you can empathize with a tree. Like, you can empathize with an animal without having to imagine that you in that tree and you in that animal are the same, you know? And so, you know, empathy is a word that didn't exist in English until the 20th century, which is crazy to think about. And so the whole society has spent a lot of time acting like sympathy is this really deep thing. But it just isn't. You're just putting on another show. You just imagine that the show that is the show of Barrett is also the same show as the show of Luna and the show of this person, because I'm imagining that we're the same. And so it's like my shallowness would be extend from like a micro level to a macro level. And if I expand the shallowness all over, now that's deep. Like,
That's sympathy.
yes, exactly.
Okay.
It's like, if I only can think about myself, that's pretty shallow, right? And so now if I imagine that thinking about somebody else is me imagining that we're the same because we're fellows, that's just me imagining that that other person is me.
Yeah.
So instead of having like a pool that's 2 feet, that's this big, the pool's now this big. And now I have an Olympic sized pool that's 2 feet deep. And it's like, look at how grand that is. No, that's just ridiculous. And so in both regards, like, there's still shallow examples of how you should interact with people based
Yeah.
off.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't.
Based off those definitions, yeah.
Yeah. And another thing, and I've been thinking about this a lot, but and this is another Western issue, but so much of Western philosophy, which I think is, religion, I view it more as a philosophy in the West, emphasizes the importance of your life when you're dead. There's just such a great importance placed on the afterlife and making sure that that's incredible, and like, you live this life so that your afterlife is awesome. Well, that narrative is going to mean that there's going to be less meaning to living. Like, most of the meaning and purpose for being alive is to, like, be dead. Which doesn't make any sense. But if you do that, if you believe that, there's going to be a greater emphasis on putting on a show, because you won't have an emphasis on cultivating meaningful stuff, because the meaningful stuff will happen when you're dead, because that's what matters the most. When you're alive, you just need to, put on a show, make it appear as though you're this, that, the other, which is pretty shallow. That's not the depth you want to get to. And so, nice has that spectacle. You look nice, appear nice, seem nice.
The appearance of niceness.
The appearance of. There's not as much depth to it. But that's what's going to happen when the society doesn't want to have depth.
Yeah. So I mean, would you agree then with the content creator of like how they're defining niceness and the ways in which like a person is nice versus kind? Yeah.
No. Like, if you want to take like a really shallow perspective, you could, but like if you want to take a bigger perspective of it, I bet there's a really high likelihood that a couple years down the road, there's going to be a video that's going to describe kind people the same way that they're describing nice people.
I see.
Because the philosophy is corrupting the word.
Yes. Yeah.
So
right.
it's not the word that's the problem. Like if we went to some
Mm-hmm.
other country and we do like Google Translate or something and we type in nice and we find out what's the Japanese or Chinese or whatever equivalent to nice. Like nice in that place may have a different meaning because of how people practice it.
Mm. Yeah.
But linguistically, if we just do those translation, this is nice and over this is nice over here. It's like it's different because they do different things with it. They have a different philosophy that shapes how they make that word manifest in the world through their actions.
Right. How they
And that
practice it. Yeah.
exactly. And you can go to plenty of other places and say it's a word like nice and you find out that they actually have three different type of words for nice where like it's nice in this context and that context you need to be this type of nice here and that type of nice there and da 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 because there's a depth to it because
Mm-hmm.
there's different modes of practicing and making it exist in the world.
Yeah.
So like it's not the word that's at fault, it's the
Right.
philosophy. And
Yeah.
if we have a problematic philosophy, it's going to corrupt all the words. We could get like so this isn't a word per se, but there's this commercial on TV right now that I just can't stand. I just cannot stand this commercial. It's for like a fancy espresso machine and it has this like woman and she has a plate and she's painting gold lines on it that make it look like, they're like cracks kind of thing. And what
Uh-huh.
she's doing, it's a Western woman, some European lady, I believe, because it's a fancy
Uh-huh.
espresso machine. So it's like, she's in Italy or France when she's doing this stuff. And she's trying to make a plate that looks like a Japanese kintsugi plate. Are you familiar with kintsugi?
Hmm. That's basically where they kind of
Yeah.
put back together broken glass, right? And turn it into art. Yeah?
Essentially. So like Japanese, there's a Zen philosophy practice that's wabi sabi, which gets loosely translated as like the beauty of imperfection. But what it really means is that like existence is imperfect and we need to understand that that's beautiful, so we need to make stuff that have imperfections in them so that when we can see it, it can remind us of the imperfections of existence so that we're attuned to that. So if I'm going to make like a vase or a fork or a spoon, I will have a dimple in it or a dent or something that like when I use it, I can feel that bump and it reminds me that this thing isn't perfect and it's still beautiful and that like reminds me to have this perspective as I go through the world, which,
Mm-hmm.
it's quite
Yeah.
helpful. Say you have a bad day, something pops up that you didn't want to have happen. Instead of getting super depressed and down about this imperfect thing happening, you can look at that imperfect thing and say, that's existence. There's a beauty in that, and I can keep on working and doing stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
really good idea. Well,
Yeah.
this philosophy of wabi sabi, someone extended it artistically and made kintsugi, where they would get something that was created that looked perfect and break it on purpose and then put it back together, but put it back together with like gold paint, acrylic stuff, gold glue, so that you can see the cracks in it. So
Yeah.
so instead of having to touch it or interact with it, you could glance at it and like the cracks are like the most noticeable thing in it. And seeing those cracks is actually the beautiful thing. And so it's the same thing. And so people in the West love this idea. It's great. And what they'll do is just paint gold lines on something and not break it. Like the point is to break it and put it back
Right.
together. It's not to
Yes.
make it look like it was
Broken.
broken. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like there's instructions on how to do it. And they're like,
Exactly.
let me see if I can take the easiest, most shallow way to have the appearance of this depth. And I'll do that and I'll make a
Yeah, wow.
commercial and blast it out to the world. And hopefully, this shallowness with the appearance of depth could convince someone to buy my expensive product.
It feels a little ironic. I don't know. As the commercial is for this like very expensive luxury espresso machine, this person is honest. Like, what does that say about the espresso machine? You know, does it just look? Is that actually luxurious, glamorous? Is that actually something that I don't know is quality made, or is it something that's just made to look quality? As this
Exactly.
person is painting, you know, gold lines onto something that was supposed to be broken, right? Like
Right.
it's that illusion.
Yeah, it's the appearance of depth
Yes.
without actually
Right.
having it. And it's
Yeah.
like they had it. There's instructions. They're like Buddhist monks, Zen practice. They've done it. There's so many examples of how to do it properly. And it's like I want to get this idea, and I'm going to do it in the shallowest way I can. And I'm gonna imagine that that's depth because it looks kind of like
Right.
the real version. So if you can do that
Yeah.
with an art practice with clear instructions, just imagine what you can do with a word like nice or kind or anything. You can do it with everything
Right.
because
Yeah.
culturally, that shallowness is what you're told to have.
Yeah.
And like I think that's the issue
Versus a
with
real deep
depth.
philosophical practice.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
That's a good example.
and like we think of Buddhism, we think of like being kind, like they take it quite seriously about how to be kind. Like it's a real dedicated, it's a thing that would manifest in your demeanor, like how you walk and how you greet people and every single thing you can do it. And there's an emphasis on being gentle, you know?
Yes.
Where
Yeah.
gentleness isn't viewed as being weak. Being gentle is viewed as being a strength, and
No, truly.
it's
Yeah. In
something
a
that
way
you
for connection.
exactly, and it's something that you practice and implement and do. And they look for, like if they talk about the Dalai Lama like that, he seems like a gentle, kind person. It's not a coincidence, you know. Sure, he was a reincarnation of a previous Dalai, but he's studied and practiced that stuff for his
As
entire
well.
life. So it's
Right.
not a
Yeah.
coincidence.
Yeah.
It's intentional.
Mhm.
If you don't
Mhm.
have any intent or intentionality in doing a specific thing, pretty sure you're going to be really bad at doing it.
Mhm.
It's real simple. And so, anyways, I think that this person's understanding of kind is just due to it being how Westerners apply it and it not being successful. And then you see how a foreign country culture tries to be kind. You go, that seems way more successful. That looks like this. That's better. We should do that. And it's like you're not gonna be able to do it if you don't have a philosophy about how to do things.
Exactly. Which you can practice for both if you're a kind and a nice person, right? It's all about having that philosophical practice behind those words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like that's it. You just have to practice things. You just practice all the time and hopefully get better. So,
Yeah. Let's move into the final segment.
okay.
Um, Something I heard a lot in middle school was in a world where you can be anything, be kind.
Okay. I don't disagree with that. That's nice. That's a nice middle school you went to. Uh, or a kind middle school.
Yeah. Is there another phrase or word that we can reconstruct, either with niceness or kindness?
So I saw this video on Instagram because
Uh huh.
and when I was in middle school, I was studied French, and so I still like
Mm.
have French stuff just to kind of get little casual reminders so I don't lose the entirety of the language that I learned. And they
Mm-hmm.
pointed out how when you say your age in French, you don't say like I am 20. You say I have 20 years.
Oh, that's the same in Spanish. Yeah.
And the reason is that like you aren't your age. Like your age isn't the thing that defines you. It's the thing that you
Right.
have.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's a really nice perspective to look at it. And
I
so
agree.
like being kind, it's like it's another English usage of like to be, that you are. And it's not like a thing that you're doing or that you have acquired through education. It's you are this thing. And
Right.
I think that also can create like a sense of being kind of like shallow, you know? Like I'm older than most people think I am, and I don't really care. But I also know that the perception of who I am is going to vary from different person to person because they'll perceive me at this age or this or that or whatever. And I'm not just the amount of years I've been on the planet. Like I've just been on that planet that long. I have that many. There's a liberating
Mm-hmm.
aspect to
Mm-hmm.
that. And so like instead of like being kind, it'd be nice if you could say that you like practice kindness, you know? Because that's a thing. Because, if you practice something, then there's also acknowledgement that you could lose it if you don't practice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so you have to do
Which
it.
is real.
Yeah,
That's
100%.
reality. That's
Yeah.
super. Yeah.
But if you just are it, then you don't have to do anything. like
Right.
like you're just it.
Yeah. You're kind of
So
assuming that you are inherently that thing just because you've claimed it for yourself. You've
right.
claimed that identity. Whereas when you're practicing, you're constantly putting it in or you may be putting it into motion, right? You're taking that action. You're being proactive about it versus being reactive and passive about.
Yeah. And like cuz if you already have it, you don't have to be active. Like you have it. You already have it.
Right.
If you're practice
Supposedly.
exactly. Exactly. Theoretically, if you think you just innately have it, you probably don't have it, but
Yeah.
you will act as if you already do, which will then
Right.
incline you to not practice because you wouldn't need to practice something that you already have just naturally, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but if you're practicing it, it's all right. I need to keep on practicing. Theoretically, I could get better at it, and I could
Right.
just keep on
Yeah.
getting better and better. Like if theoretically, like say I'm kind and I'm really good at being kind to my friends and family. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe if I practice more, my kindness can extend to people that are beyond my
To
friends and family. It can extend to people I bump into on the street. It could extend to, people that are in need, like homeless,
yes. Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Like there's an
Yeah.
expansion that you can do by practicing it. And,
Right.
we can all be at different levels of practicing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's a much better way. It'd be more like if you have to practice anything in the world,
Mm-hmm.
practice kindness, like that would make more
I like
sense,
that. I
you
like
know?
that. I like how we have reconstructed that. So in a world where you can be anything, be kind. We're reconstructing to in a world where you can practice anything, practice kindness. I
There
like
we
that.
go. Yeah, I like that too. We did that. We did that. That's a good one. uh, awesome. I like that. That's
Me too,
that's
everyone.
share that one. Practice kindness.
Adopt that.
And one last thing to talk about practicing, but I'd say in our Western world, the idea of practicing seems kind of foreign. And if we hear about it, it's like, you can take a meditation, you can take a this thing or a that thing. It's like really prescriptive. But the act
Right.
of practicing really boils down to intentionally doing it and analyzing like the outcomes of it. So like if you want to practice being a kind person, that doesn't mean you need to sit down and meditate on kindness for 20 minutes or whatever it is. It'd be more like, how can I think about phrasing stuff or interacting with people in a kind way? And then like the times where you don't think you succeeded at it, you think about it and say, oh, how could I modify this? I think I could do that differently the next time. And that's how I'll do it. And we'll see how that the outcome of that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, here, I'll give a fun example, I think. This is years ago. And I don't know if it's like directly kindness per se, but I was working on this movie, and for some reason stuff just like wasn't going my way. And when stuff's not going your way, it's easy to like get down on yourself, and then next thing you know, like you make more mistakes and stuff is like not going your way even more, and it starts to build. And at some point I just thought like I have to like change this up. Like I have to show up to work with a different focus, a different energy, just to change the rhythm. Otherwise, I'm going to get fired off of this movie, and that would be a bummer. And so I was like, I don't know what to do, but the bare minimum, I'm just going to show up to work and say hi to people. Like genuinely, like say hi to the people when I see them. Not because, and I was like, I'm not sure if I can show up and be happy. Like I don't know if I can do that because I'm in a bad mood. But maybe if I can be happy and like kind to other people in these small increments, like just like a genuine hello, like cumulative, like throughout the day, maybe that'll have an impact on my disposition. Maybe it'll have an impact on other people's disposition, and we'll just see what'll happen. Like that was the whole thought process.
Yeah.
And man, it worked. Like I people that were like expecting me to screw up, I gave them like a real genuine hello, asked them how their day was. When they would say it was this, I'd chat authentically with them. It wasn't like, hey, how's it going? And just like go off on my thing. And next thing you know, people were more inclined to help me on the set. It became obvious, like the problems that I was having may not have been like 100% my fault. Maybe somebody else was like a greater problem, and they were like impacting my work and making me, so like they could see it with a greater clarity. They're like, this guy is here every day and making an effort to be kind to everyone on set and be good at his job.
Yeah.
We care more now about him having this job. And eventually what ended up happening is that one of my coworkers was actually more of a problem than I was. And so he ended up getting fired, and I stayed on the movie. And it's like, look at that.
But you put that into practice, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And I put into practice, and it was very intentional with also like I'm analyzing it. Like it wasn't like I'm putting into practice and I'm not thinking about how to improve it. It's like, and it wasn't I did it one day. It's like I got to do this every day because I'm so down on myself right now. I can't even think about how to like just will myself to be happy while stuff's not going right. Like, let me just see if I can consciously just be nice to other people and just see what happens and assess. And it worked.
Yeah.
It worked great. But like that's a pretty basic example of like intentionally trying to be kind to other people. That worked out well for me.
Well, yeah, I mean, there you have it. In a world where you can practice anything, practice kindness.
Yeah, love it. All right, I think that's a good.
Thanks.
Good.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think that's a great ending. So,
yeah.
I mean, thanks everybody so much for listening and tuning in on this episode of Kindness in Niceness. Make sure to follow us on socials. We're at SEL_community and subscribe to The Word, which is our Substack newsletter. We also want to hear from you about what you want us to talk about next. So leave us a comment letting us know your thoughts and where you see Ftopia in the world.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.
Yeah, everyone. Have a good one.